I'll forewarn you, this is all going to get really silly, and what Sony's doing is, yeah, a bit weird. So, here's the deal. Sometimes you play a game and you just can't beat it. You can't get good. It's a skill issue. Now, there's always been a solution to that, handing the controller to family and friends who maybe can do what you can't. But now Sony wants to do something really important. Take those people out of the goddamn equation. Because what if you could just select a menu option and hand control of your video game over to an AI? Yeah, they're doing another generative AI in your video games thing. And this, allegedly, will be one that's capable of playing games better than you. So not only is there the AI in gaming discussion we've been having, there's this version of AI in gaming, because all that I want to do is buy a game for full price and then have my PlayStation play the game for me, which I suppose is a smart reframing of the brand PlayStation. Okay, let's get into it. The patent. So, there's a newly released patent. It is called WO2025080 356, and it was spotted by VGC whenever it was published a few weeks back at the World Intellectual Property Organization. Exciting stuff. Now, it was filed in September 2024, and it reveals a proposed accessibility feature for PlayStation systems, though it's actually based on a 2023 patent for a similar idea. Now, WIPO is a first step for patents. What they do is they run international checks to determine whether there's an existing patent that you may be infringing with your new idea. Sony haven't been granted this patent yet in any territory, but they clearly think it's worth pursuing. So let's dive into what it is. It is an AI-generated ghost player. If the patent is implemented, players will get two options. There's Guide Mode. Guide Mode shows you a path through the level by having a ghost of your character complete it while you sit back and watch. Then there's Complete Mode, which just does the whole sequence without any form of input from you whatsoever. It's not quite as simple as turning the new video game that you purchased into a Let's Play, but who knows? Maybe the PlayStation can give you a running commentary of what it thinks too. No, it's more about the AI taking over whenever the player is physically incapable of managing the input. So you could use this to skip a difficult section, but that's actually not really the point. And if you're about to say or think that this all sounds rather familiar, you'd actually be right. There's a precedent for this type of thing. It's not about difficulty. It's not about having a special extra easy mode. Rather, it's about accessibility and giving people options. And the PS5 generation in particular has seen PlayStation really step up with their accessibility efforts, hardware and software alike, which means that not playing the game is kind of already around in the form of having literal puzzle skips in some of the first-party titles. So in theory, this new system is essentially better because it still would show the player how the puzzle would be completed even if they're unable to do the puzzle themselves. And then there's ghost characters. Those are obviously nothing new. Everyone who's played a racing game understands that a ghost car can run the track perfectly. And then there's the Wii and DS Mario platformers that had the Super Guide, which would just show you how to play the level perfectly. So with all that in mind then, you're probably thinking, number one, how the hell would this patent ever be granted? Because surely prior art arguments would completely undermine it. And actually, that does come up in the WIPO's check on the viability of the patent. And that's because you can't patent game mechanics or a pure mathematical expression. What you can patent, though, is a technical implementation of those things. And that is where the AI of it all comes into today's story. And it's where Sony hopes they can force a wedge. So how does the AI come into this? Well, previously I gave two examples of fixed paths, where in racing games and 2D platformers, you've got a golden path that reaches the end that's essentially pre-programmed. Do you know what doesn't have that? Spider-Man 2. The Last of Us Part 2. PlayStation's big-budget cinematic games are often linear, but they're not about precision platforming or following a perfect racing line. So the proposal here is that they do an underlying AI model that basically powers the ghost, and that would be capable of understanding the specific environment and resources available to the player and then act accordingly. So basically, it's not just following a predetermined path. It can analyze the situation, know where to go to get resources, how to craft enough gear to take on a boss, and then even to, I guess, fight and kill that boss. So put simply, the fidelity of what the ghost is capable of is what this patent is built on, and that is what comes from the AI model. Now, in a way, all of this could sound promising enough as an accessibility feature, but you may be wondering, how does it learn to play the video game? And this is where I can go to a quote. Broadly speaking, an AI model is trained using training footage of gameplay of the game to identify game scenarios and learn the interactivity necessary to progress in the game from the training footage. So basically, you feed the model gameplay that shows it how to operate the game and how to succeed in the game, and then the model is able to replicate what it has seen, basically running through options for the next action based on, what's been trained, and then giving you what it thinks you want. A little bit like a chatbot trying to give you whatever form of answer it thinks you want. Now, think about this in the context of game development. This is happening for Sony first-party titles. Any functioning version of this tool that launches with a game will require the developers to feed it thousands of hours of gameplay footage to actually train the model. That would have to happen before launch because, well, the game hasn't came out yet, so you can't just scrape YouTube and Twitch. So you'll need all of that footage because in order for this to work, you do need a hell of a lot of footage. And for this to work, the success rate has got to be incredibly high. Because obviously, if your accessibility feature doesn't work, then that is a lot worse than just having a few bugs. And more importantly, this needs to be built on a game-by-game basis. And that's what leads us to the next thing. This is NVIDIA's ACE program. And it's maybe the closest thing that we've seen to this kind of thing. It's a Gen AI-powered squad mate in PUBG that is at least partially built on existing NPC systems. And that's being built by NVIDIA, not Sony, who, of course, have got much less in the way of Gen AI backing and experience. I mean, if this was an NVIDIA patent, I would totally buy them being able to do it. I mean, just look at some of the stuff that they're doing in the, embedded AI and robotics sector at the minute. Kind of interesting, but Sony doing this themselves for video games before those games have been out, before the actual footage is there. That seems weird, and it doesn't feel like it'll be in players' hands anytime soon, even if Sony have got some version of it partially functioning. So, why are they doing this patent? Well, that is where it kind of gets interesting. Sony have gone fishing for patents. It's one of the things that R&D departments are kind of meant for in some of these large corps. Basically, this technology doesn't really exist yet. Now, the patent they submitted for international searching came under a lot of criticism for generic language especially. The reviewers didn't like the framing of ghost characters because it doesn't actually mean anything in a technical sense. But Sony still submitted it, and even did so in the United States. So they seem to be hoping that the inclusion of the AI element will increase their chance of getting the patent granted, especially now that they've been given feedback on basically the wording that they'd have to change and, adopt in their patent to get approval. Now, that's because a large part of the point here is what we call patent hoarding. Leave me a comment if you saw that one coming. Basically, having a patent is not the same as using a patent. We actually know that because Sony's vault is full of patents that are not being used. And one of the most famous ones is a 2009 patent that would have seen Sony TVs gain the ability to skip adverts. And just by having the viewer say the name of the brand to end the commercial faster. Which, in a few brands, could really be quite funny. And as much as I'd love to skip ads without having to pick up a remote, is that patent just getting us to verbalize, to speak the brand name? So that it gets lodged in our head? Yeah, I know what you're onto, R&D people. Anyway, Sony never implemented that patent, in spite of them holding it for nearly 20 years. But what matters is they could choose to try and implement it. And more importantly, well, no one else can use it. At least they can use it without paying a licensing fee to Sony. That is at least until that patent expires in 2030. And with that in mind, we can now make sense of this whole affair. Do you remember the Ubisoft E3 presentations where they'd have, Bronson and all of the fake people in the trailer that were basically just actors pretending they were real people talking in voice chat, often babbling a lot of tactical nonsense? Well, in that spirit, imagine Ubisoft does some AI teammates. Well, if that was to happen, you could be sure that Sony's lawyers would start working out if they could bring a case in a world where, say, the patent we've been discussing today would be granted. You see, patents are assets, and we've talked about this quite a lot on the channel before, mostly relating to the lawsuit between Nintendo and Pocket Pair. Basically, Nintendo patent almost every new iteration of a mechanic they come up with. Sega, Konami, and Capcom's legal experts have also framed patents as assets that can help out with development costs because, hey, you developed the thing, license the patent out. And there's definitely been more than a few sketchy legal cases of that sort of thing going on. So is this Sony being so boneheaded to think that you are buying a PlayStation because you want it to do the playing for you? Or is it just them thinking of a novel implementation of a technology and deciding to patent that to add it to their hoard? Because a lot of this AI stuff, if applied to video games, well, that just leads to a whole new frontier of patent hoarding. And the thing is, it doesn't even have to be actually powered by AI. No, the promise of it just has to be enough to get past the review board to get that patent accepted. And once it is, well, great. You can get licensing. Your lawyers will have something to do. Isn't that fun? And Sony, I have a killer idea for you. Use this tech to make AI opponents and use that to relaunch Concord. And speaking of Concord, a lot of people are thinking about High Ground. I apologize for the very clunky segue, but if you want to see what the hell's going on with High Ground, which seems to be the most death flagged game of this year, well, watch this video next, and there is more behind it than you would think.